Hi, good morning, all of you. Now, today's topic, what I'm going to start is Science 2, Lesson number 6, Animal Classification. Now, we have already studied how organisms are classified into living, non living, and then living organisms are further classified into plants, animals, and microbes. Now, you have already studied about classification of plants in your 9th standard. Now, just a small revision of how living organisms are classified, which you did it in your 9th standard. So, living organisms are basically classified into two. One is prokaryote or prokaryotic, we call it, and the second is eukaryotic. So, when I talk about what are prokaryotic organisms, which do not have a membrane-bound nucleus and organelles, are called prokaryotic, which are included in your kingdom Monera. Now, this kingdom Monera are unicellular organisms. So, this was prokaryotic, bacteria included in that group. When we talk about eukaryotic, now eukaryotic organisms are divided further into two, and they are unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular organisms like amoeba are included in kingdom Protista. Now, this word also you studied last year, it is kingdom Protista. Then multicellular organisms are further classified into two, the one which has a cell wall and one which are without a cell wall. Now, when I say one which have a cell wall, so I'm talking about what is a cell wall? Cell wall is a membrane which basically made up of cellulose. Now, those which have a cell wall are divided further into two. They are autotrophs and they are heterotrophs. When I say autotrophs, they can prepare their own food, so it is kingdom Plantae, and heterotrophs are kingdom Fungi, those who cannot prepare their own food. The one which without cell wall, when I say, they are kingdom Animalia, about whom we are going to talk about in detail. Now, this 5-kingdom classification was given to us by Robert Whittaker. Now, this 5-kingdom system given by Robert Whittaker has divided your kingdoms, living organism, into 5 kingdoms, which we studied just now. It's kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Plantae, kingdom Fungi, and kingdom Animalia. Now, what is our chapter here? Our chapter says we are going to talk about classification of animals. Now, when we talk about classification of animals, I'm going to talk animals, there are varieties of animal around us. Some animals are small, some are big, some are terrestrial, they live on land, some swim in water, some fly in air. So, and they have different adaptations where they live. They have skin, some have feathers, and so on and so on. So, thus there is a huge variety. Now, recent studies have estimated that animals are approximately, on Earth we have 7 million of animals. Now, do you think that remembering these 7 millions with their characteristic? Impossible. So it is impossible to study each and every species of this animal. So what we have done, we means of course the scientists have done, we have divided this into groups, and subgroups of animals are formed on which we can classify them. So we are going to classify, this topic says history of animal classification. We are going to study the new system of animal classification. Before we study the new system, we are even going to study the old system. So just take the screen little up. And now we are going to classify our animals. Animal classification is basically formation of groups and subgroups of animals. Depending upon the similarities and differences among animals is called animal classification. So this is the definition which you have to study. Repeating, formation of groups and subgroups of animals depending upon similarities and the differences among animals is called as animal classification. Now, once you know the definition, that means we have to form group and subgroups. Now, somebody must have helped us to form these groups and subgroups. So, we go to the history of animal classification. Now, whenever we study any particular topic, there are scientists who have started with it. So, we are going to study time from earlier. All scientists were eager to classify these animals. So, the first classification which was given by Greek philosopher Aristotle. And what he did is, he classified the animals according to the criteria, the external characters like body size, habits, habitats means where they live, and accordingly he classified the animals. But as you know, when one person classifies and the idea is there, definitely others are going to try it in a much better way. Aristotle's method of classification was called as artificial method of classification, which was given by Aristotle. Now, because it was artificial, because it was just on the physical characteristics, where the animal is found, what is its habit, what is its body size, whether it is microscopic or it is megascopic, and so on. So unicellular, multicellular, and all that. But later, Theocritus, Pliny, John Ray, Linnaeus, all this went further to classify, and their system of classification was based on certain internal characteristics. So their criteria was: number one, body organization, the type of cells, the chromosome, the biochemical properties, and the internal characteristics. So their method of classification is called natural system of classification, which was of course followed by Dobzhansky and Mayer. Even Carl Woese have classified the animals. So you can see that there were different scientists who have classified. That's called the history of animal classification. So you had Aristotle, whose method was artificial method. Then you have Theocritus, Pliny, John Ray, Linnaeus, which is the natural system of classification based on the criteria of body organization, type of cell, chromosome, biochemical properties, which was further given by Dobzhansky and Mayer, and then Carl Woese. So a big question comes now: what are the benefits of these classification? So if you now see here, this question was asked in the board exam. It is, what are the benefits of animal classification? Now the benefits of animal classification is: study of animals became convenient. Then study of few animals from a group helped to understand about the entire animal group. It gives idea about animal evolution, which we are going to study in the first chapter, how animals have evolved right from the microscopic to megascopic, that is a huge animal like an elephant or a bat, from amoeba. So that is, it gives us idea about animal evolution. Animals can be easily identified with greater accuracy, because if I know the characteristic, I can know which group they belong to. It helps to understand the relationship of animals with other living organisms. It helps to understand the habits of each animal, habitat of each animal, and its exact role in nature, how the food cycle goes on, and how they are interdependent upon each other. It helps to understand the various adaptations shown by animals. Like when I say the polar region, so immediately which animals come in my mind? It because they have fur, and I can immediately come to know where it lives, where it has adapted itself to live in that particular situation. So all these are the benefits of animal classification. Then we will go further to the traditional method of classification of animals. Now traditionally there was only one criteria, okay, how animals are classified, whether they had a notochord or whether they do not have a notochord. So what is a notochord? Notochord is basically a dorsal supporting rod which is present in the bodies of animals. And now if this rod is present, dorsal support, when I use the word dorsal, I'll come back to it later when I come to, okay, or let me just tell you what is dorsal is when I say if you're standing erect, your back side is called as a dorsal side, your tummy side is called as a ventral side. So if any animal is there, say a cat or a dog, the lower part of the body is a ventral side and the upper part of the body is the dorsal side. So depending upon whether they have a notochord or they do not have a notochord, animals are classified into non-chordates and chordates. So that was how traditional method of classification went, and then we are going to distinguish between a non-chordate and a chordate. So I'll just give both the topics together. Now, what are non-chordates first? The word itself tells non-chordates, the body is not supported by rod-like structure. So if you come down to see chordates, the body is supported by a notochord. That's the first main criteria of distinguish between non-chordates and chordates. Second, the pharyngeal gill slits are absent. Now, first of all, what is a pharynx? Pharynx is the respiratory tract. When we go ahead from the nasal passage, we go ahead, we come to the pharynx, larynx, trachea, lungs in our body. So pharynx is basically the junction where your food pipe and the windpipe are going to, where they are overlapping, they're meeting each other, and where your actual respiration air enters inside, which is required for your oxidation of food and all that. So the animals here, the pharyngeal gill slits are absent in case of non-chordates, but you talk about chordates, they have the pharyngeal gill slits or lungs are present. Now pharyngeal gill slits are basically in fishes, aquatic animals. Then lungs are present, and of course when you go for further in classification, when I say mammals, reptiles, birds and all that, so that time they have lungs for respiration. So non-chordates do not have pharyngeal gill slit, whereas chordates have the pharyngeal gill slits. Then the third point is the nerve cord. Nerve cord, again the notochord, which is the nerve cord, is if present, they're specifying. It is on the ventral side, that is the lower side. It is solid and it is paired always. Whereas if you consider the chordates where we are included, it is on the dorsal side of the body, that is back side, it is hollow. So when I say there it is solid, here it is hollow, there it is paired, I didn't say here, so it's unpaired, that means it is single. Now heart. If you talk about non-chordates, their heart, if present, now not necessary they have a heart. So if they do not have a heart, if present, it is on the dorsal side. Again on the back side, जो उल्टा है हमारे case में, you know, it is on the ventral side. So heart is present on the ventral side of the body. So when I say distinguish between non-chordates and chordates, which is one of the important question, so you will again repeat it, distinguish between non-chordates and chordates. So we say the body is not supported by rod-like structure. Here the body is supported by a rod-like structure. There the pharyngeal gill slits are absent. Here the pharyngeal gill slits or lungs are present for respiration. There the nerve cord, I'm specifying the word if present, is on the ventral side, solid and paired. Whereas in our case, nerve cord is present on the dorsal side and it is always hollow. Heart again there, if present, it is on the dorsal side. Your heart is always present on the ventral side. So I was talking about the notochord. We have what is a notochord. So a definition here coming here. What is a notochord? Notochord is a long rod-like supporting structure present on the dorsal side of the animal body. It keeps the nerve tissue isolated from the remaining body because it's just a protecting device which helps to protect your nerves. So that is how your notochord is present. Now if you see this chordate ka one example is given here with a diagram. You need to draw the chordate which has the dorsal supporting rod. In the figure you can see a notochord is there, a nerve cord we can see there, and then of course the muscles, anus, gill slits. And which animal is this? We'll talk about it later. So we have divided your animal kingdom traditionally into two, and that was non-chordates, and then we studied chordates. Now talking about all the non-chordates, all the chordate animals are grouped together in one particular phylum. I've just missed out one topic. I'll just come back to this topic. This topic says that non-chordates are further divided into 10 phyla, and this is the topic of the day. So we are going to see that non-chordates are divided into 10 phyla, and these phyla, now I use the word phyla, is nothing but a plural. Singular when I say it is phylum. So we have the first phylum, Protozoa. Please understand the pronunciation and try to understand it. Second is phylum Porifera. Third is Coelenterata. We also call it as Cnidaria. The fourth is Platyhelminthes. Fifth is Aschelminthes. Sixth is Annelida. Each one we're going to talk about in detail. The seventh is Arthropoda. Eighth is Mollusca. Ninth is Echinodermata. And 10th is Hemichordata. All these phylums and the animals in this phylum are to be studied in detail. Since it is a traditional method, it has 10 phylums: Protozoa, Porifera, Coelenterata or Cnidaria, Platyhelminthes, Aschelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata and Hemichordata. But when I talk about phylum Chordata, so to talk about Chordata, this phylum is been divided into 3 subphylums, which I'll tell you. The subphylums of Chordata are Urochordata, Cephalochordata and subphylum Vertebrata. These all subphylums, Urochordata, Cephalochordata and Vertebrata, we are going to study in the next video. Then phylum Vertebrata, subphylum Vertebrata is then divided into 6 classes, and the name of the classes are one by one. Please pronounce it properly. It is Cyclostomata, it is class Pisces, it is class Amphibia, class Reptilia, class Aves and class Mammalia, in which we are included. Now too many words together, but we'll just classify it together. This kingdom is out here in front of you. Kingdom Animalia is divided into 2 subkingdoms, non-chordate and kingdom chordate, subkingdom chordate. So we have 2 kingdom Animalia divided into 2. Classification has begun. Then we have 10 phyla, or we call it as singular phylum. So we have phylum Protozoa, phylum Porifera, phylum Cnidaria, which I also called it as Coelenterata, phylum Platyhelminthes, phylum Aschelminthes, phylum Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata and Hemichordata. So these are your 10 phylum. Now put a question mark around protozoa, because protozoa are the first form organisms. In modern system of classification, you will not get protozoa. We will be starting directly from phylum Porifera. Okay, so this is traditional method. You have to remember these and you have to go in that order, because that's how they have evolved. So protozoa, Porifera, Nidaria, Platyhelminthes, Aschelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata and Hemichordata. When I come to subkingdom, Chordata is divided into phylum Chordata, which is divided into 3 subphylums: Urochordata, Cephalochordata and Vertebrata. And then vertebrata are divided into 6 classes, which are Cyclostomata, class Pisces, class Amphibians, class Reptilia, class Aves and class Mammalia. Now, this what we studied is traditional method of animal classification. It was in practice till now, but now we are going to see that there is modern method of classification. The old system of classification was given by Robert Whittaker, and there were 5 kingdoms. You already know: kingdom Monera, Protista, Plantae, Fungi and Animalia. We are going to talk only about kingdom Animalia. In old system, we saw how Aristotle classified it. We call it as artificial method. Then Theocritus and all of them, we call it as natural system. In the modern system, we will see that animals are included in this kingdom. They are classified on the basis of their different criteria, like body organization, body symmetry, body cavity, germinal layers and segmentation, which will continue in the second video. Thank you, all of you.